Hey everyone, this is Susan Choi from the Food Institute. This is the first episode of FI Live, the beta test, so forgive us if there's a few kinks along the way, but the premiere episode, this is happening right now, real time. You are watching it, speaking and moving my hands. This is pretty cool. I'm excited. So thanks for joining everyone. So excited to get into it. We're going to talk about Expo West, one of the largest conventions in the country, largest food conventions, and I want to get right into it. Let's get on with our guests. First off, I'm going to add Brian Choi, CEO
Hello,
of Founders
everyone.
Institute. Hey Brian, what's up? Next, we have Robyn Carter, expert consultant, all things marketing, tech, consulting. She's amazing. Robyn Carter, Jump Rope Innovation. Thank you so much for joining us, Robyn. Tell us a little bit about your company.
Oh, well, thanks so much for that intro. So
I love the dog in the background.
Yeah, we have a dog. Yeah, this is the new reality. But yeah, so Jump Rope Innovation, at Jump Rope Innovation, we work to help clients to understand consumer trends and category trends and to put those things together in service of smart, meaningful innovation.
Awesome. I love it.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Thank you. Last but certainly not least, we have Joseph Chen of Leo and Dragon. Welcome, Joseph.
Hi everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about Leo and Dragon.
Yeah, so Leo and Dragon, so we started in October last year, and also the focus is also around foresight and also like understanding consumer food trends, and also how that lead into sort of innovation. So yeah, that's what we do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that explanation. All right, well, let's get into it. We're talking about Expo West, as I said before, one of the largest food conventions in the country. It took place earlier this month in March, and you guys were all there. Sadly, I wasn't, so I'll have to live vicariously through you, and I want to hear everything about it. Let's start off with, first impressions, first time being in person, Expo West live, after 2 years of suffering through the pandemic. I mean, I want to know what it was like. Joseph, let's start off with you. What were your first impressions of being?
Oh my God, it was actually my first time. This is actually my first time attending. Yeah, it was so impressive. Just the number of businesses, brands, the mix of people, like from investment bankers to like entrepreneurs. Even just a lot of different like food manufacturers and beverages manufacturers were there. The energy level was amazing. I think like I have never been to a convention or a conference where there's like the level of energy. Yeah, so I had a great time. Like I think people were very like I feel like people are like really are excited to be there. And everyone who was there, they were really excited. They were looking to really discover and learn new things. So I love the energy. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Robyn, what about you? What were your impressions?
Yeah, I mean, it was also actually my first time being at Expo. We're always at Fancy Food Show in New York, and we had planned to go before the pandemic, but we all know how that turned out. So this was my first time being there as well, and I thought like the energy was great. People are so excited, first of all, to be back. Right? Like to be able to be back and to kind of move about the cabin freely, I think felt good for people. And, being able to kind of discover things in a really hands-on experiential way. We know like consumers are looking for that, but even for us, within the industry, people are just looking for those opportunities to kind of touch and feel and engage. I felt like it was a little overwhelming in some ways at first to be in this place with all of these unmasked people, but what is happening? But Joseph and I talked about that later, like what is happening? But it was amazing to be able to just explore that way, and and just see the enthusiasm, and everybody who had stuff to show, and then even and the people who are walking around learning about what's out there.
Yeah, that's great. I heard that from Brian as well, just like the energy. People are just excited to just be back and just talking with one another. I mean, Brian, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it was great. So hats off to New Hope and to the Expo West organizers. Like, they put on a great show. 57,000 people, 2,700 exhibitors. It was massive. It was the biggest conference that I've been at, and also my first time. But definitely, what resonates with was, what Joseph said. It's high energy, lots of people, all the major players there, right? And it really, after 2 years of doing Zoom and doing virtual conferences, to be able to have that chance to meet in person, to share a meal, to share a drink with people, it's just it was just priceless, right? Like, this is why the in-person experience is so valuable, is that you have that type of touch point with folks in the industry. So I do want to say, to the group here, to the audience members, please interact with us. Definitely share your thoughts, your questions. We want to hear from you. This is the whole point of FI Live. It's not for us to be talking amongst ourselves, but to interact with the community here. So, definitely, share your comments, and if you even want to come up on stage and introduce yourself, you're welcome to do that. So, shout out to WE The Cruise. Thanks for joining in. So yeah, that's all I'll say about the conference. Excellent. I can't wait to go back next year.
Okay, we seem to have a question from Kelly Beaton. What was the most creative product you all tried at Expo West? Who wants to start off?
I nominate Joseph.
Yeah, so I tried a lot of different products. This one I thought was really interesting, called Fast Bar. So I personally do intermittent fasting. So I fast all the way, like, for 16 hours. But this bar actually allow you to break your fast, but you still you can eat while you're not breaking the fast. So, which is amazing. And then the product itself is actually quite delicious. So I just love the concept itself, and then just thought, like, the creativity in terms of, even though probably the people who does intermittent fasting is probably a very small group, but be able to come up with the idea that you're able to, like, maintain your fasting but able to eat at the same time, I thought, that's amazing.
Yeah, really interesting. So one thing that I saw, first of all, I feel like that's so interesting, right? That you could eat right while you're fasting. I think that probably will help a lot of people to kind of overcome that hurdle, because some of it is just the habit of wanting to put something in your mouth and wanting to do that. So that's pretty interesting. One of the most interesting things that I saw was it was a prebiotic that they had for people, but they also had it for pets, and it was about gut health and gut health for longer term health, and helping the gut to be resistant to some of the things that, like, might be in the pet foods that might be detrimental to animals. So I thought that was just really interesting, thinking about how people are thinking about their pets and sort of looking for those same solutions and same styles of eating for their pets that they are for themselves. I thought that was something that was really fascinating. I thought that was really fascinating. And something else that was really interesting that I tried, I would say it would have to be, I was surprised to be handed a CBD gummy. But at that point, you're just putting anything in your mouth. So yeah, I mean, it was that was really interesting. Day Trip had some CBD gummies that were talking about terpenes and some of the health benefits associated with that, which I thought was, the mainstreaming of all that. I thought was really interesting too.
I love that you brought up products for pets, Robyn, because shameless plug, I did a piece not too long ago on the pet industry booming. The products that they're coming out with. I mean, multi-billion-dollar industry, and especially now that the pandemic has skyrocketed the number of pet owners. I mean, shelters had wait lists like months long. It was amazing. So I can definitely see that there were probably a plethora of products at Expo West that were geared specifically toward pets. I mean, we're talking like fresh food, meal plans, and like not organically made toys. I mean, it's this whole thing. I mean, with all the food trends that are going on that we'll talk about, it's like there's probably like a subcategory for your pet as well. So it's like you can go along with like a new trend with your pet right there with you.
Yeah.
It's like the pet's like a child, right? It's like part of your family.
Yes.
That's the new normal now. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I agree. Fascinating.
Anyway,
Yeah,
so I want to show a comment from Robert Sarles. We have to talk about the plant-based elephant in the room. Brian, you want to start that off?
Yeah, so Robert, tell us your thoughts in the comments. If you want to come up and on screen, you're welcome to do that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. But there were a ton of plant-based. Like it seemed like for me that, you know, more than 50% of the exhibitors were plant-based. And you know, that's great. You know, there's a lot of excitement about plant-based, but you know, one of my concerns is that due to the number of plant-based, you know, companies, like, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm like, how are these companies going to survive? The competition is so fierce, right? So, you know, that was my first thought. There were some products I want to highlight that I thought were exceptionally good, right? So I was able to, to try out Planterra. So Planterra is JBS's plant-based division. They made a plant-based bacon. It tasted great. Like a lot of the products that I tasted at plant-based, you know, quite honestly, they were okay. They weren't great, but I would, you know, I really liked Planterra's bacon products, and so yeah, there is some pictures of Planterra there. I do see Robert. He's happy to come up. So Susan, can you bring up Robert and see if we, you know, we could love to hear his thoughts as well.
Okay. All right, great. I need again, beta test. I need to figure out how to get him on. So.
Okay, so while Susan's doing that, maybe Robert, you know, Robyn and Joseph, maybe share your thoughts on plant-based.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Like there's lots of different like innovation and products, like everything, just even like the expansion of category that you don't really think about as being plant-based, like scallops, like plant-based scallops. I have never thought about even like turning seafood into more a plant-based, especially shellfish. So like, I thought that was really interesting. Like, and also just different way to express plant-based. Like I think I see a lot more example in terms of getting a bit more specific on the ingredients. So it's a lentil made, it's a like, you know, jackfruit. So like there's like a bit more specific in terms of the transparency, in terms of what's actually in the plant-based product.
Right.
Some product that I tried was really interesting. It's actually like just egg. I think the taste of it, even though it's plant-based egg, but it just tastes amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that one. Yeah.
We use it at home. Yeah. It's great.
It's amazing. Yeah. That was fantastic.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. No, there's so much. I agree with you that there's so much. And I think calling out of the ingredients, and I want to bring WE as soon as we figure out how to make this work. WE, and because, you know, shout out to Cruise Burgers, you know, I think, you know, which is a burger, that's her burger business, made with, you know, mushrooms as the main ingredient, you know, and I love what they're doing, which is saying like eats like a burger, tastes like plants, like tastes like vegetables, which I think is interesting. And, you know, we've talked about this in the past, Brian, but I think what we're going to see happening with plant-based foods is that there is going to be this kind of like more in-depth, like a desire to understand what is in this, and right. is it in the spirit of what I'm thinking of when I'm thinking that I'm choosing plant-based things for my health, for my well-being. You know, we know that most people who are eating plant-based foods are not vegan, right? They're people who are dabbling in this category. And so, you know, if they're making that choice because they think it's healthier, at some point, you know, they're going to look at a plant-based item, and then they're going to look at a piece of salmon and say, which is really a healthier choice for me? And the more that, you know, a plant-based item feels processed, the less likely that I think that's going to be the choice to win out, you know, over something that's that's not plant-based. And so I think, these products that are tied to real ingredients that people know, that are closer to the spirit of plant-based,
Right.
are going to be, are going to have longevity, where, among the others, taste will win out, but a lot of the others will fall away. There's just so much there. We don't need 30 chicken nuggets. Like, how do I nuggets? So,
Right.
It's great that those options are out there for people. And I think that the fact that there's so many of them pushes the brands to be better and pushes like innovation. But I think that there is going to be this other path where people are sort of differentiating and looking for more real, ingredients. Wow.
Yeah,
We
that's
have
really
a
cool.
guest. So I better open the
have a
door and
guest.
see who it is.
Open the door.
Hello.
All right. Hey, Nona.
Hey, good to see you guys.
Welcome. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming on.
Yeah, no, absolutely,
Appreciate
absolutely.
it. Okay, so Nona, break it down for us. Who are you? What do you do? What do you sell? What do you make? Break it down.
Absolutely. So, my name is my company as well. Sometimes it gets a bit confusing, but I'm an Asian fresh CPG brand. So we have a line of fresh noodles, stir-fry kits, bone broth. What we try to do is to really bring fresh, authentic tasting Asian food, but in a way that's much more healthier, better for you, and in a format that's a lot more convenient and accessible to mainstream Americans.
Yeah, awesome.
And I think it's and Rob, I see Robert's gonna, so we're gonna bring you up, Robert, in a bit. But one of the highlights, I think, what Nona's company, Nona Lim, it's like it represents the next generation of Asian cuisine. And that's one of the things that really kind of popped out to me at this year's Expo West, is the number of Asian products and Asian flavors coming to market. And so maybe Nona, you can kind of share your perspective, if you agree with me, if that's your opinion, and some of your thoughts on kind of the rise of international cuisine and flavors in the U.S. market.
Sure, absolutely. I think that, let's see. I think certainly if you just look at some of the stats in the last few years, I remember talking to some of the retailers, and one of them said that, like back in 2020, Asian food was the fifth fastest growing category in their chain, with number one being toilet paper, right? And it was fun to kind of hear that being echoed with a number of different retailers, from Costco to Albertsons to Wegmans to Kroger. And that's because consumers are really yearning for something different. And I think we see that a lot with the pandemic as well, because everybody is trying to, or having to, cook at home, and now trying to kind of widen their repertoire a little bit, right? I mean, pizza night, pasta night, taco night, there's only so much you could do, and with frozen dinners. And so, Asian cuisine has really been embedded in American culture, mostly at the restaurant level, and we're starting to see consumers wanting to replicate that at home. And I know, Brian, in one of the conversations we had, the way I think about it, right, when we look at all this rise of international cuisines, I really feel that, back in the Nordics, like Anthony Bourdain, with some of his travel shows, really introduced
Right.
American consumers to lots of different interesting cuisines. And then you have the rise of all these other cooking shows on cable and then on Netflix, right? So it really brings it to everybody's homes. And then, of course, with Instagram,
Right.
7 years ago, Instagram wasn't that big a thing, but now everyone is pinning their favorite dish, wanting to cook their favorite dish. And so I feel like trends, and of course, TikTok, even more so, right? And so I think that trends are happening so much quicker than it used to be. And certainly there is so much variety in international cuisine flavors. There's so many different things for people to choose from. Certainly in the last couple of years as well, we see a lot of new DTC brands starting, right? Whether it is Omsom or Fly by Jing or Senzo or Nguyen Coffee. There are just so many Asian entrepreneurs who have started businesses and created kind of this new wave as well. And so it's really exciting to see that. We certainly saw some of that at Expo. Whether it is, you definitely have kind of the brands that have been around a little bit longer, kind of brands like Hodo, Dank Foods, we all started around the same time, right? And then you have some of the newer brands who've jumped on, right? Like I mentioned earlier, like Senzo with the Asian flavored sparkling water, right? So there are some Asian inspired flavor in a non-Asian category. And then you have Asian products as well, like, dumplings. Laoban, I think it's one of them. Or you have, the instant ramen. The whole instant ramen category is totally revamped, right? Whether it is with kind of a Lotus Foods that's been around for over 20 years with their, rice noodle ramen that's doing really well, to some of the newer entrees, like I think Wicked, they must have had a lot of money
Right.
because they even had like a whole food truck giving away samples, and that cost a pretty penny at Expo. So it's exciting to see all these different companies popping up for sure.
Right. No, that's very interesting. So maybe we can bring up Rob here. And as he comes on board, like, speaking of plant-based, like, it was surprising for me to see the first plant-based spam from Omni Foods. And like, so as a Korean, and Susan, as Susan and I are Korean, we love spam. Koreans eat the most spam per capita of any other race. And to see a plant-based spam kind of shows the influence that the plant-based movement has had, in the food space. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Rob, I do want to recognize you, Rob. Thanks for coming up. And, Rob's been a member of the Food Institute, and so I invited him on. And maybe, Rob, you can introduce yourself and share your thoughts on plant-based.
Sure. So, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me on. So I've been involved in the natural food world for over a decade. My first Expo West was 2012. And you see every massive trend flow through and out of Expo West. And so my background, though, I've been involved in the natural food space. I spent nearly half a decade with one of the largest nut companies on the planet called John B. Sanfilippo and Son, and bought for them one of the premier dried fruit and nut branded plays in produce section called Orchard Valley Harvest. And then I, for 6 years, was with Wyandotte Foods, which was a manufacturer of plant-based snacks, most specifically things from ancient grains, and very proud to have helped launch and co-commercialize Hippies, which was introduced into the market in 2016, as you all know, the chickpea.
Very cool,
puff.
Yeah. Right.
So this Expo West was kind of interesting for those who hadn't been multiple times. The New Hope guys are fantastic. They made the footprint smaller, so you didn't realize that it was about 70% of what it had been prior to pandemic. And the first thing that hit me was everything 2019, CBD, 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 CBD. And if you look at the percentage of CBD at this Expo West, it was like 2% of what it was in 2019. And all the booths back then were just jammed. So 2022, what do we see? Plant-based, 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 plant-based. Say that fast 10 times. And you guys wrote a piece about this, and we should talk about it because I thought it was well done. But I love following John Foraker from Once Upon a Farm, and he wrote something provocative to get a great discussion on LinkedIn going. He said an absolute explosion of new brand offerings across fresh and frozen in all channels and food service, hard to count. And his biggest concern is this like a mania where there's all this money coming in and all these companies that, in good times are losing money, but throw in supply chain, both in terms of the front end, in terms of ingredients, throw in labor issues, throw in logistics, trucking issues, and then fighting for wherever you get, on shelf, online, trying to make DTC work, in a vacuum sometimes. It's a really tough time to bring new brands to market, and a lot of consumers have been doing everything digitally and not going to the meat space of retail. You wonder what's going to win and what's going to survive. So it looked like, the gold rush, and you wonder who's going to win. And from my, experience in the space, there's generally going to be one or two players in every subcategory you can think of that will win. And a lot of them are just going to come and they're going to go. Yeah,
that's a great point. It's that's exactly what I was saying, Rob, at the very beginning, is that, the back of my mind, like how many of these companies are really going to be around in a year or two, right? And it's great. Like I feel like at Expo, it is not cheap to have a booth. and Nona, you and I have been we spoke about this, like, when we met up. It's like, it is not cheap, not just the booth, but you got to hire unionized labor. You got to fly people, your team in. Hotel nights were going for $1,000 a night. Like, it is. And so, it's what's admirable is the passion that people have for the space. Being a real, somewhat of a realist makes me think, hey, is this, like you said, Rob, is this really the gold rush? So, Robyn, Joseph, any response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started talking about that a bit in the beginning about, there's just an abundance here and it will shake out. And I think, and you guys have heard me say this before, but, we, like, our perspective is that the brands that are leading with taste, with flavor, with deliciousness are going to win out. So that's important. I think it's going to be critical, especially because we know that the consumers of plant-based products are not necessarily and not often vegans. So they have a choice. They could choose to eat something not plant-based just as easily. So, the winning formula there is to make something that's really delicious that just happens to be plant-based. So it's accessible to everyone. The barrier to entry is low. I don't have to give up anything to enjoy that eating experience. So, I think brands that do that are going to win out. And I also think that, first of all, the price accessibility. So just brands that can make these types of options accessible to people, are going to be important. And I think that brands that can bring this closer to real food, to plant-based, to the spirit of plants, so that if I'm making that choice for a health reason, I feel assured that I'm choosing something that's actually healthy for me. Because a lot of those people might not have chosen a processed hot dog in if plant-based options weren't available, they might not be eating that. So is a plant-based processed hot dog a better option than whatever they would have been eating otherwise? And I think some people are going to start to do those equations in their minds now that sort of the newness, like the honeymoon is over a bit for some of this. Like, we have these plant-based things, they're part of our lives. And now I have to kind of look at this with a more critical eye. So that's my perspective.
Yeah, I want to interject here because we have a very patient commenter who has an excellent question. She's asking about STEM. Thank you so much, Summer H from LinkedIn. She says that she's a STEM educator who writes about how math and science education can and should be taught using everyday topics like, for example, food and engines. Let's talk about, she's asking, can you guys talk about the innovative STEM technology that any of your companies utilize, or the innovations that you guys might have seen at the Expo that may become more commonplace? And I feel like that kind of relates maybe to what you had been mentioning, Robyn, the other day, biotech. You want to go in a little bit about that? And anyone else, please jump in.
Yeah, and I'll just talk briefly, but one of the great things about being at Expo was just having amazing, thought-provoking conversations with people that I would meet walking around. And I was sitting outside by the fountain at the end of the first day and met these wonderful folks from this company called Brightseed. And what they're doing is they have an AI platform that helps to identify the active compounds in fruits and vegetables and plants, and then match them up with sort of pathways that they know are effective in the human body for creating different things like dealing with anxiety or whatever other things, and they're working to bring those things together, to discover those things in plants and then to bring them to life, through food products, through beverages. So that to me is fascinating. And we know that people are looking for these types of benefits from their everyday products, right? Everybody's trying to do more with less. They're looking for health benefits. It's not enough to just be absence of bad, but they're also looking for presence of good, right? From beverages, from snacks. So I think that the opportunity to do that and to do it using real food, real plant ingredients is just like huge and vast and super interesting.
Yeah.
Fascinating. What about you, Joseph? Did you see any interesting products that is utilizing STEM technology?
No, I didn't. I actually didn't come across that. Yeah, so
interesting. That may be something that maybe companies need to be more aware of. What about you, Nona? What are your thoughts about this?
I think for me, what's really interesting though is that 5 years ago, Expo, you really see a lot of organic products, right? I think that as I'm looking at all the plant-based products, I have not seen a single, I don't know, they were not very organic. If you look at it, right? So moving towards
Right.
STEM, what's really interesting is that how important is organic and non-GMO? Those seem to be things that are less prevalent at this show. I'm not sure if it's because, there's a lot more of so-called biotech looking at different, kind of ingredients that can do certain things or different kinds of processing. I mean, for me, the interesting call out is when we talk about traditional food is Hodo, right? Good friends with the founder. They launched a kind of like egg salad that's made with tofu. But if you look at the ingredients, it's just very much whole food ingredients, and that's kind of their roots. But they're definitely, I think, one of the fewer ones compared to a lot of the other plant-based companies out there.
Interesting. Yeah, that's. Rob, did you have something that you wanted to share, or?
Yeah, just a quick comment. With a lot of the plant-based things that are tasting better, I have to believe that many of them are using what I would call greater AI-like technologies to try to mimic tastes.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a food scientist, though I've worked with plenty of them, and they're worth their weight in any metal you want to attribute it to. But to be able to mask things and to mimic things has become more of a scientific exercise than ever.
Right.
And so I have to believe if you talk to the flavor houses, the ingredient houses, particularly the ones that are working with not only the smaller but the much larger CPGs that are getting more deeper into plant-based, that there's a lot of STEM activity going on in that endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There's another all great things. I mean, Robert, you touched on a major point. I mean, these plant-based products that want to taste like something, you don't. It just doesn't come out of thin air. You gotta go into the lab. You gotta figure out that formula to make it have that taste. There's another question from Zamira Zargami. Thank you, Samira, for joining us from LinkedIn. She was asking about carbon footprint. Products being conscious about carbon footprint reminds me of one of the top takeaways from the article that Brian and Joseph wrote for Expo West. Just if you could expand on that sustainability that you said that was a major trend that you saw at Expo.
Yeah, there's so much like going on, and it's actually a personal passion area for myself as well. So like I do see a lot of for a lot of meat products that are actually going to more regenerative agriculture farming. So like that's great. So like I think there's a lot more transparency in terms of the type of soil used. So I just see for meat related products there's a lot more push in that direction, which is amazing. I think this is like fantastic. For climate change, I think I saw a few brands are really pushing on the climate friendly type of storytelling. So a brand like Airy, I think they make like climate friendly like crackers. There's also a lot of upcycle of ingredients. So like there's tons of product I saw. It's really used either like unwanted ingredients or like upcycle ingredients into the whole product development. So yeah, that's some of the area that I saw from a sustainability standpoint. It's really upcycle. Like in terms of like ingredient sourcing and also like supporting in terms of the regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, and I'll just add, like, it was very clear that this whole ESG movement is going to that next level, right? So it's not, it's carbon footprint, it's diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was a major theme at this conference, and this is going to continue. Like, this is not just a flash kind of trend. This is going to deepen, and and I think this is important for a lot of companies to realize, is that if you don't have a plan, like an ESG plan, you're already putting yourself at a disadvantage, right? And this is not to get political. This is not to push an agenda. Like, we don't do that here at the Food Institute, but it's you recognizing that this is a major structural change in the food and beverage industry that's going to affect every company. And Rob, I see you nodding your head there. really think about practice, the practices of incorporating some policy that it's easily verifiable, it's transparent. I think it was just very eye-opening to see that many companies really embrace this structural trend, and I can't emphasize that enough. I do want to have another guest.
Sorry, I thought you were done. The doorbell rang.
No,
We have to bring her in. She disappeared though. We have to get her back. But we have another guest joining us. Sorry, please finish your thought, Brian.
Yeah, so just shifting gears here, look, I want to touch upon the topic of innovation. A lot of the companies that I came across, right? Again, there's 2,700 exhibitors. Not many, I wouldn't say there were a lot of quote innovative companies. There were a lot of Me Too. There were a lot of copy. I want to say maybe copycat is the wrong word, but I didn't come across a lot of companies that were wow, this is a truly innovative product. And so but one of the companies I wanted to highlight here, and hopefully we'll get Amy to join soon, is she's developed a low carb, high protein bagel. As a big fan of, I'm a carb guy. I love bagels. I live in New York City. Susan knows that almost every weekend, I order 12 bagels for the weekend. I'm chowing down these bagels, and they're so many calories. But she's really, she and her team at Better Brand have developed this new bagel, and I just wanted to highlight that. It was one of the more innovative, products that I saw at Expo West. And so maybe we can open it up to the group here is, as we wait for Amy, what were the most innovative brands that came out of this conference? And maybe we'll start off with Nona, and then Joseph, and then Robyn.
Oh gosh. I think it has to go back to plant-based, right? If you talk about the innovations, right? The plant-based scallop, the plant-based spam, there's plant-based smoked salmon, if you want to think about innovation as kind of outside the envelope, definitely saw a lot of that, and I don't know. I go back to what Robyn said about, taste and deliciousness. I think there is definitely a question out there as to whether in a couple of years' time, how many would still be around. But if you want to talk about pushing the envelope from an innovation perspective, I probably would go with the plant-based products that I saw. Yeah.
Actually, just as we're talking about plant-based, let's bring on WE. Let's bring on W. DeCruz, founder of Cruz Burgers. Hey,
hello.
WE.
Hey, WE. How are you?
Hi. Good. Hi. How are you? Thanks, Robyn, for the invite.
Thanks for coming on and being with us. Okay, break it down for us about Cruz Burgers. Tell us all about it.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Well, first and foremost, my husband and I are new food entrepreneurs. I'm in the tech space. He's in finance. And during the pandemic, we were on just a spiritual fast. Every year we stop eating meat just for clarity and prayer. And so I happened to just create a recipe making it was supposed to be with chickpeas, but I ran out of chickpeas. I started using mushrooms, and my husband loved it so much. And I joke around because I say, you don't come to me for cooking or gourmet. I'm not the person you go to. So when he said he loved the patty, I was like, bro, are you serious? He's like, no, let's take it to market. I'm like, are you? So, and literally that's all we did. And at that time there was compromised immune system. We saw what was happening with the pandemic. And so we literally took this one recipe. This is our first SKU called Cruz Burgers. And so we use mushrooms, pea protein, but really just mushrooms and onions. And we created a recipe and a burger patty and, took it to market, and we sampled for a year. I mean, we weren't even interested in much of anything, but I think it was perfect timing. Plant-based was growing. And so we saw the opportunity, and so we launched it. We're in 11 markets now in Michigan in about 10 months. So we've been kind of moving. And people love it for all the points that you've mentioned in this conversation. We say that it's an old school veggie burger, new school flavor, because it cuts and bites like a burger. If you cook it, you almost can't even tell. but it feels fresh because it's vegetables. It's not
Mm.
anything that we've, cooked up in the, in the lab or anything of that nature. It's truly vegetables, and everyone can relate to mushrooms, whether you're plant-based, veggie, meat lover, you can connect to it. And I didn't like mushrooms, and my husband did. And we joke around, after 13 years of being together, the one thing we thought about was food. And so we finally found a dish that brought us together in a way that we never imagined. So that's cruise burgers. Yeah.
I love that. Thanks for sharing the great summary, great backstory too. I feel like that's really what it's about. It's like you'll see that, because you guys were talking about the plethora, like the flooding of different, products, plant-based products. But it seems like, the ones that will stand out or, have a good chance of succeed are the ones who actually have, that great backstory. Like it was natural. It came out of like,
natural,
like an earnestness,
yeah,
to fulfill a need. And it wasn't just like Brian said, wasn't just like simply a Me Too thing. Like plant-based CBD. Okay, I have a thing, like,
yeah,
it'll blow up because it's the kind that everyone loves. It's like, there has to be like a point to it.
Yeah, it was a natural pull,
right? Because like, people know what they like and they know what they don't like, and they can spot,
Yeah, it was just a natural pull. I mean, it was like a natural pull. We were just fasting off of meat, and mushrooms that we say that, the meat of, I know it's fungus, but it's like the meat of plants, mushrooms, right? And so we use it not necessarily for the taste, but for the texture of being able to cut into it. And then with all our different flavors and barbecue flavors, we say it's an original. Everyone says it's spicy and so forth. But we love for anyone and everyone to try it. I know Robyn, hopefully, I don't know if you've tried it yet.
I haven't tried it yet. We just ordered it. They've just come, so we've got my husband ate it. It's like, you're gonna wait for me, but I haven't tried it yet, so I'm excited to try the product.
One thing, like now that we're on this topic, because I just really wanted to mention, it reminded me of Nona. One more question, because I know you have to go. But one thing for you, you have a great backstory too, because this food came from a natural passion. I loved reading about it on your website that you were a competitive athlete. You were a competitive dancer, and you loved the feeling you got from it. Said it seemed like it was clean eating. You were really into that, clean.
Yeah.
Like you wanted whole food, natural vegetables, things like that. It's like similar thing. Like you had a natural passion.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually started competitive fencing at a much later age, so my competitors were all teenagers, maybe 18, 19 years. So I was like more than a decade or decade older than them. And so, the way I have to keep up with them is to really make sure that I ate well, because, as we get older, the recovery time is just longer. Right. So for me, it started off with, really finding out that I had the sensitivity to, gluten and dairy. And so then creating all the food products for myself initially through a meal kit delivery program when I was still fencing competitively. And then what happened was that, almost made the London Olympics, missed it by 1 point, got really upset, quit fencing or competitive fencing, had a baby instead, and then launched the CPG side of the business. And what I did was, I wanted to lean back into my Asian roots, and all the flavors that I grew up with, but to make it in a way that would nourish my consumers and myself, really, because that's what I like to eat. And that's how I started with a lot of the Asian flavored bone broth, with all the rice noodles, and all the different things that, you could eat quickly as well, because sometimes, a lot of times in Asian cooking is actually not that convenient, right? For those of us who cook Asian food, there's so many different steps to it. So, how can we do it in a way that is still healthy but fast? And that's why, some of the stir fry kits that we launched last year as well, like we have a pad thai stir fry starter kit, and that is actually a plant-based version. It's easy to make it plant-based because noodles are plant-based. And then for the sauce, what we did was we actually took out the fish sauce and we put in other, ingredients like tamarind, so on and so forth, to still give it all the umami. But we wanted to just make it flexible, right? So that, it's less around trying to make a plant-based product for people who want to eat plant-based, but it's more around flexibility, right? So that you can do it however way you like it, whether you are cooking it with, plant-based chicken or plant-based meat crumbles or with shrimp, however you want to do it. But yeah, that's kind of how I approached it.
Yeah, one of the things I think it's interesting you bringing up, competitive fencing. So, recently there's been a lot of public, well-known athletes have come out, focused on mental wellness, right? So, the number one player in tennis, she just announced her retirement. She's like in her early 20s, right? And so the link between mental wellness and food is something that I think is coming up to the forefront. One of our comments here from Rich Alterman, I'll just bring it up on again. Yeah, he's asking, some companies are targeting mental wellness in their marketing. Can you share some insights on how CPG brands can leverage this trend and what separates food from other industries? So, maybe Robyn, you could start off with that, and then if anyone else has any comments about the tie-in between mental wellness and food, that would be great. So, Robyn.
Yeah. So certainly an important issue. We know it's a really important issue, especially for younger consumers, who struggled through the pandemic and I think continue to try to find their footing in a lot of ways. We know there's a light being shined on mental health, but also, some of the other issues around that, like focus, right? Attention span, like all of that kind of stuff. When we're living in this hybrid world, we got the dog here, all this stuff going on, you have to be able to stay focused. So I think there's a lot to be done here, a lot of work to be done here. We're seeing a lot of leveraging adaptogens and kind of ancient wisdom, right? So real ingredients, like things that are time tested, that have a lot of authenticity and heritage to them, and adaptogens being used for mood and all of those types of benefits. The other thing that I think is really interesting is gut health. So that's kind of we've been talking about gut health for years, but gut health in service of your gut, like your digestion. And then I think it expanded during the pandemic to really talk about your immune system. 70% of your immune system's in your gut. So I think there started to be a broader understanding that, hey, there's a lot going on here. And now there's an emerging conversation around gut health and mental health and that piece. And they've done research. I read a study recently that the gut of somebody who has depression is different from the gut of somebody who's otherwise, healthy in that way. So I think that understanding how we can leverage gut health for mental health is really an interesting idea. And, I think coming through CPG brands feels accessible. Beverages, foods from trusted brands. I think that makes it feel accessible to people who might otherwise hesitate to look for ways to address these kinds of issues. So I think there's an opportunity there, but I think also brands have to be really clear about what they're offering, clear about what the benefit is, what the promise is, and consumers have to feel like it's meaningful and not just kind of like, oh, this, a brand found a hot conversation and is jumping on the bandwagon.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on a lot about gut health and mental health, and I think that there are a lot of products that are, kind of focusing on gut health, mostly beverages, right? And then otherwise, in terms of things that's probably slightly less scientific, but probably still good is, a lot of the teas as well, right? Some of the teas, like even with their branding and naming, it's no longer about chamomile. It's all about what kind of mood you want to be in, right? It's very focused on moods as well. Or I think there's some product talking about FODMAP, FODMAP, kind of like dietary or the different things as well is out there. Certainly, I know some CPG brands in the past have almost, I'm not sure how scientific it is, but they've certainly touted kind of the fact that, like the ice cream that's low carbs, right? The very low sugar, low carbs, so that you can binge eat and not feel guilty. I'm not sure that's all that healthy, but it certainly has worked as a marketing message, and we've definitely seen some CPG brands kind of go with that angle as well, right?
Yeah, and especially a lot of the indulgent brands actually like cookies, like some of these categories actually make people really happy. So that's always saw a huge uplift in terms of volume and sales like during the pandemic, because I think it also helped consumer with their mental health. Because they just bring a lot of different positivity to consumers their lives. So Yeah, so indulgence
Right.
also like can
Yeah.
play a role in this.
Yeah,
well.
and you
Yeah.
you you are right on the cookie front. Like the whole baking category exploded during the pandemic because people wanted to cook at home. They wanted to do something together. That's that social element as well.
Exactly, and the meal kits too. Meal kits as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
if we
so
think
we're-
about that from like even from a communication or like that type of perspective, activation perspective, can we create communities? Can we help people to feel connected to something, outside of themselves, so that which also helps to boost mental health. So I feel like there's a lot there, even in the communications, that can help people in this way.
Yeah. So we have about 5-10 minutes. One of the things I wanted to kind of close in terms of as a theme is, coming out of Expo West and seeing 2,700 exhibitors really kind of pour their heart and soul into their company. The amount of passion that these owners and founders have, it's just incredible. Like, I don't know of any other industry you have such passion in food and beverage. And I just want to give a shout out to all the entrepreneurs out there. To start a brand, from start point A to point Z, and having to deal with the trials and tribulations of growing a business. Like Joe, when you started your business, you asked the question like, what are some key takeaways as being an entrepreneur? And one of the things I share with you, Joe, is that it's incredibly hard, right? It's so hard to the tide is against you. And so, I just want to give a shout out to all the entrepreneurs, just keep at it. There are going to be times it's going to be tough. You're gonna kind of question why the heck am I doing this
all the time. All the time.
Yeah. But it's the passion that drives the growth, personal growth, but also professional growth as well. So yeah, so I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts here, like about entrepreneurship. Go ahead, Susan.
I do want to, while you're on that topic, I think it's part of that passion that fuels people like Nona Lim and WE. I want to throw it back to WE because I know we had a commenter that brought up an important point, that WE, wants to make some comments about, the importance, the thing about mushrooms, bringing it back to the mushrooms.
Yeah. Well, to tie it back in, Brian, because I think when you live life and you I think life is all about, of course, service to you and your family, but then there's unreasonable service when you go outside of yourself and you start to address problems and situations that impact people and communities. And so to Summer H's point around, some racial groups suffering from vitamin D deficiency, that's something that my husband actually has been speaking about. There are technologies, to the STEM point, where you can infuse vitamin D into mushrooms to then increase the vitamin D level to help those who have deficiency. And so it started with just us fasting off of meat, just for a spiritual fast to get clarity about our new year. And then it's now become this whole responsibility to bring healthier eating to families, around the world, and addressing some of these issues like vitamin D deficiency. So to your point, Summer H, thank you for the comment. It's something that we are looking to address in our mushroom products because we're all about meat alternatives made from mushrooms. That is our main focus. That is our main ingredient. But to your point, Brian, is that it's really hard. And you ask myself all the time. First of all, we did it in the middle of a pandemic when we pulled our children home from school. I was pregnant at that time. I have a 7-month-old who's just as old as our new business. It's been a challenge, but Expo West ignited our fuel because we did see a bunch of brands, but we still felt like we had a niche in the market within the plant-based space. And we were excited. So we came back with another level of exhilaration and commitment and conviction to do it and to do it well. And so we're super excited. And thank you for the platform to share and speak. Robyn, again, for inviting me to the conversation. Because I feel like a newbie in this food space. I am such a newbie. And Brian, my husband's actually watched an interview of you on the Plant CEO on YouTube, I think. have you done interviews with Plant Seed? I don't know. He's always sending me all these links with interviews, and
I've done
I'm trying to
quite
keep
a few
up.
interviews. I'm pretty sure there are a couple of videos of me floating around on YouTube there, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, this looks familiar. Everything is like, so, but thank you so much for the invite. I appreciate the conversation and dialogue today.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to mention to everyone here, we do have some newsletters. So Susan, if you could put that up on the chat here. We have our free version of our newsletter, a plant-based insider newsletter. So definitely sign up. Go to our website on the homepage, top right. You can sign up for the plant-based insider newsletter and also our daily update newsletter. You get a daily, I think it's the best, best newsletter out there. So it'll keep you updated on what's happening in the food and beverage industry. And then this is, this FI Live, it's going to be a regular content platform. So be on the lookout for our next session in about a week or two. And Susan's going to be moderating that. But just again, I want to just give a shout out to Robyn and Joe for, great partners of the Food Institute. They've been with the Food Institute from day one. On webinars and podcasts, and just really, thank you guys. Thank you, WE Cruz, for coming on. For Robert Sell, shout out for you to come on and share your thoughts, and all the audience members. We want to keep building the community. We want to invest in you guys, right? Like, as a media platform, our goal is to provide the best platform content, unbiased, unfiltered, just really honest conversations, authentic conversations, and that's what FI Live is all about. So thank you, everyone. And Susan, anything else you want to add before we close?
I just want to say that it was so fun. A lot of great points were mentioned. Thank you all to the commenters that asked questions. Thank you to Rob, Sarles, Nona Lim. Thanks for the pop-in. WE, of course. Awesome appearance. Thank you so much. And just like you said, Brian, Robyn and Joseph, they always got FI's back. I love it. Always hear the commentary. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Stay tuned for the next episode of FI Live. This was it. I think we did pretty good. So thank you so much. Right. And we'll see you later. All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.